Blackballed, 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 Blackballed.
Welcome, everybody, to Blackballed. My name is James D. Fiore, and today is kind of a special day for me. When I was a kid, I had two friends, and we used to dream about one thing constantly throughout our youth, and that was to visit every single Major League Baseball stadium in the major leagues. We ate and slept baseball. And we imagined getting into a car and going to Fenway Park and going to the Bronx and going to Yankee Stadium and driving all across the country and then back up to Canada and just visiting all the ballparks. That's how nutty we were about baseball. My guest today had the pleasure and the privilege, I think he would say, of doing something similar, I would say. When he got to tour hip-hop history from one bookend to the other, when he did what I consider to be the greatest hip-hop documentary of all time, Hip Hop Evolution. I've watched it about 6 times, I think, now, because I just love hip-hop that much. And the whole time I'm watching it, because I'm obviously familiar with our next guest and his music, the only thing I kept on thinking is, how does this guy keep his composure? How does someone do that when they're walking? And the way I described it to a buddy, it's like he was walking inside his dream. He was definitely walking inside my dream. And we want to talk about that with him today, along with a whole bunch of other stuff, because he's about to go on tour. And his name is Shad Kabango, aka Shad. And Shad, welcome to the show, buddy. Listen.
Yeah, thanks.
There was I'm finding you. You're right there. Thank you, man. Thank you for coming, first of all. The idea of being able to walk through, and we're going to get to the tour and stuff, but I need to ask you this, because I've been wanting to ask you this for years now, because Hip Hop Evolution wasn't just a documentary created by an amazing, production team out of Canada. It was what I consider to be like the authority over hip hop history. And when I was watching you talk to all of these legends, I was really distracted by what it must have been like to be you sitting in front of them. And so my first question is, when you got the gig to do it, what was it like when you sat down and you knew what you were about to do, what you were about to embark on? What was it like for you to sit down or lie down in your bed or whatever and stare at the ceiling and then just allow yourself to get lost in what you were about to do? What was that like?
It's still a little surreal to me, to be honest. In August, this is the accepted, birthday of hip hop. So every year people will shout out Kool Herc, they'll shout out the pioneers, and I'll see a clip of me with Kool Herc floating around, and it feels surreal to me. I was nervous for every single interview because these are my heroes and the people whose shoulders I stand on. So yeah, I was nervous in the good way, made me really want to get prepared and also, enjoy the interview. A lot of my job, I felt like, with the show was just to try to help those guys get back to the time where they made their seminal work, because some of them, it's been 20, 30, talk to Ice-T, for example, right? Like, he's moved on.
Yeah.
He still loves music, but he's moved on in many ways. So, my job is to try to get him back to, okay, well, but what was it like in LA in 1983?
Yeah.
And so that they can just tell the story from a, real place of remembering what it was like, because fortunately, a lot of them have moved on to amazing things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know what though, I think you were the perfect person for that job, for that role, I guess you would say, because you have an authenticity to you. You're not afraid to smile at people. You made Snoop Dogg cry telling a story that you know that he's told thousands of times in his life, right? Like, and I like my hat off to you, brother, because that is one of those jobs where I don't know how someone like me would have handled it. Like, dude, I saw your reflect. This is fucking crazy. I saw your reflection in Kumo D's shades, and I was just like, I don't even know, because I listened to How You Like Me Now for like a year and a half, just like straight every single day, lip syncing it in the reflection of my window in my bedroom and stuff like that. But like, to sit down in front of him, I have so many questions about that documentary, and I know it's like 6 years old now, but it is. And I think I heard you say, actually, let me play a clip because I think you might have said it on this show. But I'm gonna play this because I want to pivot into something else because I know that you have a lot going on. So just let's listen to this.
I think what's fascinating to me about those early days is the way that you can actually track it a lot more clearly, because they didn't have the internet back then. Now culture, it just spreads so fast and moves in so many different directions. Yeah. Whereas back then you could actually follow it out of the Bronx into the other boroughs. You could follow it over to the West Coast, and where it picks up those distinctly West Coast influences. Now, geographical influences, it's just not the same sort of thing, So I could see the culture evolving in any number of ways, but actually just so fast and in a way that's very difficult to track. So I don't know where it's going next. It's really because some kid on the internet could hear hip hop on the other side of the world and completely innovate and inspire somebody, and that could happen in 24 hours. Whereas before, the culture took time to move, and you could actually track its movement through people.
Yeah, you were on breakfast television saying that. And the whole thing about hip hop culture, if you're not into hip hop, people don't understand why people put the word culture next to it. There's not really much of a discussion about rock and roll culture. The only thing that I can even think of that comes close is electronic music, because when I was like in my early 20s, I was throwing raves, and I fell into it because I just happened to get a roommate whose other roommate was like the biggest rave promoter in Toronto. So I fell into the scene with the people that were like leading the scene, and there was a culture there. It was a culture of like friendliness and openness and empathy and all that kind of stuff. And but hip hop culture it's so different because it allows itself to be malleable depending on what corner of the world you're trying to express the art form in.
It's
go ahead.
cool that you brought up electronic music, because hip hop is electronic music. So that's why maybe there's that similarity a little bit in terms of like there is really a culture around it. And especially, back in the 80s, 90s, even early 2000s, part of that might be that when you talk about electronic music, it's like the electronics were hard to come by. They're expensive.
Yeah. I love that part in the documentary where the blackout riots happened, and then all of a sudden everyone had gear, and it was like, let's do it. That would have been dope if in Whitby, where I grew up, if it was like all of a sudden there was a blackout and I could go to Long and McQuaid and grab myself an MPC. That would have been pretty cool back in the day if I could do that,
Like this actually only occurred to me a little while ago, but freestyle culture, like that's what I came up in as an artist, was freestyling. Okay. And I only realized a little while ago that part of why we were freestyling all the time was because we couldn't make music. You couldn't, like, you needed the equipment. And I grew up in London, Ontario. It's like, where are you going to get an MPC? And even if you can get an MPC, how are you going to know how to use it?
Yeah. Right.
And then you got to get records, so it's like, we couldn't, it was so prohibitive. But yeah, like hip hop culture, like our show really goes place to place, right? To see how this local New York culture started to interact with all these other local cultures and started to evolve and change. But what I was going to say to like your first question also was like, I was geeked. And one thing I realized, like, I was excited to talk to all these people. And what I realized was, like, I don't have to hide that. In fact, if I show my enthusiasm, it actually helps them get back to those moments, because, like, we all normalize our own lives. So they're like, whatever. Yeah. I made The Chronic, big deal. You know, it's like, if I'm excited, they're like, oh yeah, I guess that was pretty cool. You know, and then they can go back there a little bit easier. But yeah.
When you mentioned freestyling, can you? I ask every rapper that I talk to this because, to be honest, my buddy Nigel from the Pocket Dwellers, because we were talking earlier about how you like the Pocket Dwellers. He likes to tell me every once in a while that my backpack is on a little bit too tight, right? Like I'm a little bit too much of a purist, right? Like, and he's probably right. But when I was a kid, and I have so much respect for people that can freestyle, because there was a pocket of time where I was okay, but like next to the guys that could really spit as far as like off the dome shit, I wasn't in their class, and I was fine with that because I understand it's like being a bodybuilder. Like you need to like exercise that freestyle muscle all the time. But what the fuck happened to the definition? This is where what the hell happened to the definition of the word freestyle? I thought it was a universally understood thing. It's when you make shit up off the top of your head in that moment. And then somewhere along the lines, probably because some rapper couldn't do it, they were just like, nah, it's just shit that people never heard before. I'm still upset about that.
So I think it's a mix of things. I think it's partly that. And then I think it's also partly in the battle world, at least. I think what happened was,
you retrieve lines that you've done before because you're on the spot? Is that?
Well, I think what happens is, like, let's say you and I are always entering battles. And so I know you're going to be at the next battle.
Oh, okay. I see where you're going.
I'm probably going to come up with stuff for you, right? So at a certain point, it's like, okay, well, let's get rid of the pretense that we're not coming up with stuff for each other and just come up with stuff for each other.
Right. And that's how it's evolved, right? Like King of the Dot type stuff. Like it's,
I think that's where that evolved out of. Is it like, it's always the same 10 guys. We're always preparing for each other. Let's just put it all out there and just do it, like, for real.
But you're with me though. I have to get you on record.
It is its own art form. Coming up with stuff off the top is its own skill set. And it's part of the culture, and I think it'd be good to preserve that. And there is part of it that I think is in the non-battle world. I think that not everybody had the skills to do it, and they got rid of it.
Okay, well, let's listen to Shad freestyle. I think it's a freestyle. Even if it isn't, it's dope. So this is from 9 years ago. I just saw you post this on Instagram the other day.
Seeds of future change right now in the present. As we work in our fields here, grounding the message in real life lessons, getting right down to the essence. Then we water that like a fountain when we're counting our blessings and sharing the hopes of our hearts and the doubts and the questions. See the seeds sprout in the trees that leave thousands of fresh ones. I haven't got there yet, but I found some direction. I'm not a Catholic, but these tracks is a sound of confession. It's like I said them and heaven sent down a postcard over a large ocean of doubt via Coast Guard, the angel just saying we're okay. We've all broke hearts, broke parts, fought and hurt, drank and smoked darts. And we're all victims, we're all innocent, no charge. You're free to be who you are, now go and don't harm. The world is so starved for you being unique. That's cliche, but it often is with the truth. See, it's nothing too deep, it's nothing new. We all knew it as you seems, we just forgot as soon as we grew a few feet. You believe that? These aren't just words, you believe that?
And I think right after that, or right before that, before you did that, one of the two, you said, are these the kind of vibes that we want to bring back? Were you talking about freestyle, or were you talking, like, what were you talking about there? Because I know that you're the kind of rapper that I love the best. And the reason why is because I don't see a glossy image over top of who you are. I see such an authentic soul there. I really do. I loved how Brother Watching, I'm pretty sure it's your mom's voice that you sampled. And I think you did it again in the, was it God or Work on the TAO album? And I was just like, this cat is like, you're so impressive to me when it comes to that. But do you think that there's too much gloss now? Like, does it depend on who the rapper is? Like, what are your thoughts on what's going on in the culture and in the music like that?
Yeah, I definitely think I've been around long enough to track it. You know what I mean? And I guess when I came in, the fundamentals, of skills and having something to say and all that, it was already on the fringes. You know what I mean? It was like alternative. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But it was
yeah,
still around. I think it's been pushed further and further to the fringes. So when I said you want to bring these vibes back on tour, it's like, I, let's have these experiences around the music. That the kind of experiences I fell in love with, where people are really speaking from the heart and trying to craft something with some skill and presenting it with some style and some conviction. You know,
yeah.
because yeah, when I started, that was already kind of alternative, but it was still close to the mainstream. You know what I mean? Like if you think about artists like The Roots, Common, Most Def, Lauryn Hill, it's like, well, Lauryn Hill was like a Grammy Award. She was huge.
She's
So
so dope.
so dope. So like those fundamentals of hip hop were around very much, and now I feel like they're still there, but they're further and further from the mainstream. I think that's fair to
Yeah,
say.
yeah, that's totally fair to say. If I ever had the chance to make like some sort of super group out of three rappers, because I used to hate it when people used to take Lauryn Hill and put her, who's the best female rapper of all time? I'm just like, dude, Lauryn Hill can rhyme around almost every male rapper ever. And she can sing. So if I'm ever making a super group, I'm making it with like Questlove, Nas, and Lauryn Hill or something like that. You know what I mean? Like she's always going to be part of that team. I wanted to ask you something actually a little bit earlier. A lot of us, because hip hop is so new and because it's like new to people that are growing up, I was born in '76. So when I was like, the first time I heard a rap song, I was 9. And it was Lottie Dottie by Dougie Fresh and a young cat named MC Ricky D, who thankfully changed his name. Best name change ever in the game, to Slick Rick, right?
Yeah.
And I thought I had discovered plutonium. Like I was like, what the fuck am I listening to? And then I just started like seeking out hip hop, which wasn't easy in Whitby, Ontario, Canada at the time because there was barely a rap section. It was like Fat Boys and stuff like that, right? And then all of a sudden, Def Jam artists started finding their way to me, and I was buying like Bigger and Deffer. I bought Bigger and Deffer first, and then Radio because I had to go backwards. Do you remember the first rap song that you heard?
I don't remember the first rap song that I heard. So I was born like a few years later. So hip hop was a little bit more around. My early memories would be, first of all, on the Canadian side, like Let Your Backbone Slide,
Yeah,
Dream Warriors.
they played in my grade 8 grad.
Crazy.
Yeah, I know. Did you know that they're like the 5th best selling Billboard? Oh, what was it again? They have this crazy stat where they're like one of the only Canadian hip hop bands to be on the top 50 Billboard chart or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. Our heroes are unsung, man. Like our pioneers in Canada are unsung. Like Dream Warriors were huge in Europe too.
Yeah.
Like
That's
Europe.
where Ivan Berry had to take him. That's what I was told. Anyways, I was told the story that Ivan Berry had to take him to UK because he couldn't get anything done with him here because I don't know if Canada's still like this. You would have a better idea than I would.
Yeah.
But back in the day, it was like they almost encouraged us to sound like New York MCs.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
You know?
and like Dream Warriors were so themselves, like so unique, and dope. And like that's what it was back then, like you had to be different, right?
They got to walk around with that weapon, that big staff. You know what I mean? I don't think people understand how dope they were, though. Like,
So crazy dope. And like they get props everywhere. When we talk to the pioneers, like they'd be like, oh yeah, Dream Warriors, super dope.
And
So
was it? Do you think our industry itself is the problem? Like, there's like, is it lacking infrastructure? Is it lacking imagination? Like now that we're in the digital age, it might be a bit better. I don't know, but
yeah, it's all of the above, to be honest. That it's just that lack of faith that like this stuff will appeal across the country. It's just that
mhm.
the belief hasn't been there, and it's starting to be there a bit more now because with streaming the numbers, bear it out pretty easily and stuff. But Mishimi also another one that the pioneers we talked to, they're like, oh yeah, Mishimi is super dope. Like,
Yeah, I
and,
still have a
and
crush
it's
on her, to be honest with you.
not known enough here that our pioneers. You know what else is not known enough is that Toronto has one of the earliest hip hop scenes in the whole world.
Really?
Yeah. And
Educate me, because I can name some of the people from back then, but like, what do you mean by that? Like,
so what I mean by that is the kind of parties that they were doing in New York in the early 70s, mid 70s, that were hip
mm,
hop. Part of the influence of that was Jamaican style DJing. And that same culture was in Toronto because of, Jamaican immigrants landed in New York, London, England, and Toronto. So they were throwing the same jams here in the 70s. So it's like,
now Jamaican funk means something to me entirely different than what it did before.
yeah,
You know?
yeah, like that influence and that culture, that was here. Compared to say cities like even Atlanta that owns hip hop now, but
Mhm.
for the 70s and most of the 80s could care less about hip hop. It was not their culture.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because even in that documentary, and I swear I'll move on from this, but I got to tell you, like,
No,
I love talking to you about this shit because but yeah, like the first few chapters of hip hop evolution, it was just you just stayed in New York, like it was just a New York vibe, and it was like, you know, yeah, it was really interesting stuff, and be, I'm gonna ask you one last question about that, and then I swear to God we'll move on.
that's all
Did you
good.
get to cipher with any of those MCs?
No, no, we kept it real, like, you know,
Professional, yeah.
professional. And one thing I wanted to add too, like again, back to your very first question, was the one person I was shook to speak to was Q-Tip.
Really? Yeah. Why is it though? What is it? Just because of the admiration? Like, dude, that guy, again, like a staple. I don't like ranking artists, so I don't. They're all different and they're all good, and I don't care to name a number one rapper, but Q-Tip is so good because he's on both sides. He's a really good producer,
Yeah,
and one of the greatest voices in hip hop history. You
yeah,
know, and
yeah,
what he did for One Love was, like that, like even just like a simple chorus like that, just like that's the identity of the song, right?
yeah, yeah.
So
And I think what it was for me was like I prepared for every interview, obviously, and prepared for the person, but like I didn't realize till I was in front of him how much I owed this guy.
really
I
expand
mean,
on that.
like Tribe, him, Fife, Ali Shaheed. It's like Tribe started something that I participate in. You know what I mean? Like a kind of hip hop.
Mm. Like a less gritty but really artistic kind of thing. Like the Native Tongues were all like that,
Yeah,
right? Like De La Soul.
like native tongues. So yeah, I definitely I would include De La in that. It's like they started something that I'm a part of. Like if they didn't start that, my life would be different.
Yeah, no, I see. I think I know exactly what you mean. Like, it was okay finally to kind of be a rap artist without having to be so tough.
Yeah, like they brought in this like different way to do it. Yeah, exactly. Like you could be playful,
Hmm.
creative, Afrocentric. You know what I mean? Like all these things, they started that. They made it
Yeah,
cool.
do they predate Dream Warriors? It's around the same time, I guess, or Dream Warriors might predate them even. Like,
Yeah, you know what? That's interesting. Dream Warriors might predate them. It's like
I
roughly
think they do.
it's roughly the same time,
Yeah.
So that's why, I was shouting out Dream Warriors too. Like, these are like important artists as far as what I do, specifically what I do, but hip hop in general.
I'm,
Kanye comes off of that. Pharrell comes off of that. Honestly, like
yeah.
they drew inspiration from those guys and that blueprint. So
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on. You have a tour coming up. Wait. Before we move on, I used to live in Little Italy in a college between like Spadina and Bathurst, and I swear the Rose Garden video was done in my hood because I'm like looking at this and I'm like, is that my backyard? Is that where Shad is sleeping on his couch? And I was like, and so I just wanted to know where was that filmed?
that's close. So that's between Harvard and Bloor.
Yeah.
Around Clinton, around Christie.
Ah, okay. So a little bit farther west of Bathurst.
A little bit further west of than Bathurst and a little further north than Little Italy, but right around there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, that's where I used to smoke weed before weed was legal. I used to just like travel, like I used to traverse the alleys around Little Italy and just try not to get caught smoking weed back in the day. Okay, listen, you have a tour coming up. I guess it kicks off on what is it, the 29th in St. Catharines?
That's it. Yeah.
I saw you talk to I saw your Q interview last year about sort of like I have a clip, but it's not done processing because I forgot to put it in until now. But you basically were talking about how you sort of had this vision of a circle. You remember that?
Yeah.
Can you go over that again? Because I was kind of stoned when I watched it last night, and I was like, I really want to understand this, but I don't want to fake it. So maybe if you explain it again, like you can give me an idea of what you meant by that.
Yeah. So, yeah, what inspired the album, the direction for the album was this image I had of a circle, and the circle was divided into, let's say, 7 or 8 different pieces. Okay, so imagine just like a simple 2-dimensional circles cut up into a bunch of pieces. Then those pieces start to break apart and float away from each other, and then each of those pieces starts to disintegrate and disappear. So that was the image that was in my mind, and it was an image to me that represented, I guess, us as individuals. So I saw the circle as like an individual, and the pieces as the different parts of who we are. So like our relationship to other human beings, our relationship to nature, our relationship to work, our relationship to the sacred, the spiritual. And it just seemed to me like this good visual metaphor for what's kind of happening to a lot of people in our society, because it feels like all these different pieces of who we are like under threat. So if you take, for example, work, it's like work is becoming more precarious and like harder to find, or like our relationship with other human beings. It's like, obviously there's way more division and fighting and distrust in our society. If I think about our relationship to nature, it's like, obviously, like that's in crisis. So that image, it just helped me kind of like think about what's going on with us right now. And it also felt like a way to organize songs for an album. Like I could write songs about each of these different aspects of who we are. You know what I mean?
That's really interesting. Yeah.
So, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I find that really interesting, especially the sacred part, because I'm an atheist, and lately I've been softening a little bit, not in my lack of belief in sort of an omnipotent being, but in my appreciation for other people's beliefs and in whatever they would choose to even. It's a strange thing for me because for years I was a really kind of militant atheist. I was just like, it's the the opiate of the masses, and it's like the downfall of our society can all be traced back to religion, this and that. But then my father died, and I started thinking about how I didn't have anything, to sort of cushion the blow of an estranged father Who he wasn't. We weren't even close. And when Kobe Bryant died, I know this is all out of left field, but this is what happened. When Kobe Bryant died, I started thinking really clear, a lot more clearly about the value of a belief system. And now I'm envious of people who are spiritual when they're grieving. And
Yeah.
to look at the way that you constructed that album, just to circle back to that, as a writer, and as a hobbyist MC, which is what I call myself, because I never stopped writing rhymes and spitting. I do it for the love of it, right? Like I just do it the same way people pick up a basketball and shoot hoops, even though they don't play for the Raptors. That's how I feel about hip hop, and I'll always feel that way. But like to be able to piece out an album like that must have been really cathartic for you, like just to be able to segment yourself like that.
It was, man. I mean, you know what it's like. Like somebody said this to me. They said writing is thinking. I think that's true.
Yeah.
So when I'm taking time as much time as it takes to write this album, it's like that's time I get to think.
That's right.
So it is cathartic. That's me getting to process all this stuff.
Have you had to deal with and I'm not trying to get you to, share personal like things you might not want to share, but let me rephrase. Has the music allowed you to sort of experience that mechanism of being able to recover from something traumatic? Let's put it that way.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of some specific examples. There's a lot that I process. I'm fortunate. I still have my parents. Like I haven't experienced that kind of loss yet in my life. But loss of relationships. Loss of. There's a song on my first album that I wrote with my mom. So my family's from Rwanda. And a lot of our extended family that I never got to meet, but like my mom's siblings, her dad, died in the genocide. And so her lyrics really process that grief, and my lyrics process this, I guess, more confusion about, confusion. There's no other. If I had my head around it, I'd say more, But the confusion
I can tell
of my
experience,
someone that was fortunate enough to grow up in a safe place, but it's kind of it's like a coin toss that I'm here, So yeah, man, like the processing music has been that for me, for sure. And that's what I always gravitated towards. Like I always loved music ever since I was a little kid. But the first time I ever heard I guess it's an example that stands out for me is Common's Retrospect for Life, where he's talking about him and his partner having an abortion in one verse and then having a kid in another verse.
And he's directing it towards the kid that was inside his woman, right? Like that. He made the fetus the audience, for lack of better words, and I thought that was just fucking powerful.
That when that came out, I was like 14 or something, and that was like I didn't know you could do that in music. I didn't know
the concept of directing it in the way that he directed it.
I didn't know you could make music that deep. I didn't know that. I watched much music. I watched the latest Michael Jackson video or something, it was exciting. It was cool, but I didn't know that you could do that. So, and that ultimately I think is, a big part of why I do what I do is because I realized, oh man, like this is serious.
That's why I love hip hop so much.
Yeah.
It's a genre that allows you to like be a filmmaker and a writer and an exhibitionist and a braggadocious character and all these things like in one song if you wanted to. You don't see that in other genres, right? Like
1,000%. You hit the nail on the head. Like you can be a whole human being like that.
even if you're fragmented into seven
Even
different
if
pieces,
you're fragmented, you can hold all those pieces together, right? Like you can be, we all heard who like Pac or whatever, like be super spiritual on a track and super political on a track and super wild and nihilistic on another track,
Yeah.
It's all
Yeah.
him. That was all who he
I'm
was.
I'm a Dear Mama guy for sure, and
Amazing.
it's I thought a love song in hip hop when I was young was All I Need by Method Man and Mary J. Blige. And it is sort of a love song, but it's like the grittiest love song of all time. But then as I got older and I guess Cool J's I Need Love was sort of like the first hip hop love song I think I ever heard. But your mo- I know that you love your mom, and I've never met you, and I love that about you. But your mom, just based on the history that you just told me about her relatives in Rwanda, she must be just the strongest woman you've ever known.
Yeah. Like a real deep strength,
Mm-hmm.
like a real deep strength, a real deep confidence. When I think back to even her and my dad bringing my sister and I here, she's like 28. There's no, in early 80s, it's not like you didn't have Google Maps. You just go somewhere sight unseen. You don't know.
Yeah.
What can you know about London, Ontario from
I don't know.
Kenya?
It's literally the opposite of Rwanda, dude.
Yeah, you can't know anything about it. It's like the opposite. But, they arrived here with all full confidence, like, yeah, we'll figure it out.
That's amazing.
So a lot of strength, a lot of confidence, a lot of dignity. I admire that.
Does she like being on your music? Or is she shy about it, or does she enjoy it?
No, I think she likes it. It's like a fun little thing to do, and I think it's cool too because it's not like it crosses over into her world. Like there's nothing for her to worry about. You know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
doesn't really cross over into her world at all. It's just like whatever.
Yeah, that's right.
But what's cool is that most immigrant families, it's like they want their kids to do something really practical, right?
Mm-hmm.
Secure a
Yeah,
life
that's
for
right.
yourself. But because my mom always loved writing and loved the arts, she was like, yeah, this is cool that you do this. And not that she pushed me into it, but more encouragement than I think a lot of immigrant kids got from their parents when they wanted to do something creative.
Well, really, because the old prince taught me that your mom was pretty pissed off that you were always at home, kind of like lazing about.
Yeah,
did
as
you?
much as any parent should be.
Oh,
But
for
like,
sure. I love the razor. What was the razor line in that one? Because like I've been shaving my head for so long that like if anyone ever tried to give me a bic to shave my head, I'd just be like, "Are you fucking joking? I'll cut my head in several different spots." you know. Um, and I wanted to know about. Actually, I'm gonna ask you a quick question about that video. How much time do you got, by the way? Like, are you looking at like?
I'm
Do you know
good.
how
I've
much
got
time you have?
like 15, I think.
Okay, cool. Did you have like any real, was there any part of that old Prince video that was actually from the set of the Fresh Prince? Because if not, who the fuck designed that set? Because I was just like, this is crazy how
They killed it. So, first of all, the location scouts. The location scouting was crazy because they found that one house for the opening shot that looks like
where
the
was that?
the Bel Air mansion. It was somewhere in Markham.
Wow. Really?
Somewhere in Markham. And
Like the opposite
they
of
let
Bel
us,
Air.
use the front of their house. They were cool about it. So we
Yeah.
shot that there. And then some artist friends of mine, like the director and a friend Rodrigo, some other people, they did all that spray painting on the wall, like where the chair is and it's
Right.
spinning.
Yeah.
They did all that. they copied all that. So those are all
They found an actress that they made look exactly like the mom from the video.
yeah,
Right?
that was a friend. And then
You got that whole skip thing when you got out of the cab to walk to the door down. I don't know how many takes that took, but it was like brilliant. It was perfect, right?
I had to get the skip down, and I had to get the head spin down at the door.
Yeah, that's
I had to get that down.
yeah,
Some friends of mine were the schoolyard bullies
yeah,
that picked
yeah.
me up
That's
and
right.
spun me around.
They must have
Yeah, that
studied
was
the
super fun.
graffiti
We
too.
did that in one day. It was super fun.
They must have studied that graffiti too, and just like still
Yeah.
framed it and just did exactly what was on that wall. Do you know if Will Smith ever saw that?
I don't know if Will Smith ever saw it. Jazzy Jeff saw it.
Yeah, more accessible, Jazzy Jeff. Yeah.
Yeah, and that started up like a relationship. Like he's always been super supportive.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And that was like the first time we connected was because of that video.
I had him. I booked him as a DJ for one of my parties like 18 years ago or something, and just one of the nicest dudes. Like he's a little quiet sometimes, but he's super like professional and super nice, and he never like complained about anything. Like he was just like the greatest guy to work with. And yeah, that was
The best. He's the best. He's right up here. Like he's the best.
and one of the best scratchers ever. Like the shit on that first album, that the Fresh Prince's first album, some of the stuff on that is just like there's DJs now that can't do that. Like that can't scratch like he did back
Yeah,
then.
he is. I mean, in the DJ community, he's the gold standard. Like because he's done it all. Like he can cut, he can produce. Obviously, he's got a Grammy.
Mm-hmm.
He's just the best party rocking DJ. Like
Yeah.
live.
I've always wanted to ask him how many times he really got thrown out of Uncle Phil's house. Because if you go back, it looks like he's wearing the same clothes in every shot that he gets thrown out of the house in. So I'm not sure, like,
That's one
or
thing
what
I
he landed on.
talk with him about the show. I was always just so interested in him as DJ and musician. But yeah, I'm curious. I watched the new Bel Air too.
There's a new Bel Air?
Oh yeah, dude. They rebooted it as a drama.
Really? Who's playing the role of Will?
This kid who's like got all his mannerisms and everything down.
Really?
But it's a drama. It's like an hour-long episodes.
I gotta see this.
Yeah.
It's like, I found that clip that I wanted to play before. And we're gonna circle back to the tour after this question because I know
Sure.
that it's huge. The pandemic. You said something in that Q interview that I'll play now that I thought you nailed it. And here I hope this is the right clip, but here we go.
All these things you've just talked about that sound like pandemic things, they're actually what was already happening, and the pandemic just kind of like hit the gas pedal on them, accelerated them to like some pretty wild extremes. We're talking on platforms with a reach, with a power that is even difficult to conceive, it's even difficult to grasp, and how they even function because of algorithms. It's like even the people that make the algorithms don't know how they function at a certain point. So it's all extremely opaque. It's all, mitigated by extremely, extremely powerful corporations that are, of course, invested in us just engaging more on those platforms. That's their, that's what they want. That's how they make a profit. So yeah, we can't forget that.
The reason why I chose that clip and actually spliced two clips together there is because one of the things that I've been thinking about for the last 2.5 years is how social media has made this pandemic a lot worse mentally and emotionally than the pandemic probably would have if we didn't have social media. And I just wanted your thoughts about that, just in general, just because those are the two big things that I think about a lot right now.
Yeah, man. I mean, I guess when I think about social media, I think about a couple things. One, I think about how new social media is, and how we can't forget that. Like, we have this way of assuming that the way things are the way things have always been, and therefore there's nothing we can do about it. So I think it's important that we remember, first of all, like Facebook, which is the first real social media site with mass adoption, started like 15 years ago or something. Like, and secondly, like I was saying in the clip, it's like these aren't they aren't neutral. They're certainly not like benign. They're certainly not trying to help anybody's well-being, mental health. But they're also just not neutral. Sometimes we can think, oh, they're just neutral. They're just platforms and we use them however we want. It's like, that's not what it is. They're created and they're nurtured to be addictive and to, you know, and to like drive profits. So like,
and to divide.
What's that?
Like the algorithms are designed to divide, right? Like if you, there's that, The Social Dilemma. I don't know if you've seen that documentary on Netflix, and you're just like, they make more money if they can make you pissed off and argue with people.
That's it. That's it. That keeps you on the thing. So, you know, I think it's time for us to like, so now we're 15, 20 years into social media. I think it's time for us as a society to decide what we want out of this stuff, right? Like, can it be positive? Yeah, there can be positives for sure. But there's also negatives. And I think now we have enough time that we we can take, we have some real perspective now. Like, this is what we like about it. This is what we don't like about it. This is what's dangerous about it. This is what's dangerous about it for adults. This is what's dangerous about it for kids. This is what's dangerous about it for our parents' generation.
Yeah.
You know, people talk about social media and kids being dangerous. It's like, it's also very dangerous for a generation that is used to only reliable information.
Right? Yeah.
And
somewhat reliable.
In this world that, you know what I mean? Like,
and now grandma's getting her accounts phished because she doesn't know not to click the link, right?
She doesn't know not to click the link. And she doesn't know that that article that looks like a real article is full of disinformation. She's only ever seen good articles before.
I saw an article out of the UK that they were like, well, Trudeau's really turned into a tyrant because now he's getting his soldiers to run over old ladies with horses. And it's like, that's not what happened. Someone got accidentally a little hit by a horse because they were crowded around and this horse kind of freaked out a little bit. But they're making it seem like, well, he's a tyrant now. And, we have the evidence. He made his police trample people with horses. It's just like, that didn't happen.
That didn't happen. Yeah. So, you know,
I think the algorithm, you nailed it in that interview, by the way, because it's the algorithm.
Yeah.
I remember the internet and even social media without any algorithms.
Yes.
And you had to do the work. If I wanted to find Shad, I'd have to type in Shad and then I'd find you. Now it's like, if I'm a fan of Shad, my newsfeed will provide Shad, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's fine, I guess, but makes us a little lazy and it gives them all the power.
Exactly. And we don't know the rationale behind what we're seeing. You know, that's like a huge difference. Yeah, like you said, in early days of social media, it was like time-based. You open your feed and you just know what you're looking at is chronological or, you know, based on what or whatever. Now it's based on you don't know what. And in fact, the people that make the algorithm, even at a certain point, it's based on they don't even know what, because it's like self-learning. So it's like they program it and then it learn, and then even they don't know at a certain point. And then we also know Facebook has run experiments on people, on huge groups of population. Like, what if we do this to people's feeds? How will it affect their well-being? It's like in other government can't do that, or even universities can't do that. If someone wants to run a psych experiment on you, you have to get their consent.
Well, have you ever read the terms on these social media sites that you signed up for 15 years ago and probably have never gone back to see the 17th generation of fine print? A lot of it is crazy. Like, you know, one of the reasons why they make your photos so small. So if you upload a photo that's a really high res photo and it's like 8 megabytes, once you upload it, it's like a megabyte. And the reason why is because they want to be able to take the high-res photo themselves and do whatever they want with it, but they don't want anyone else to do it. So that's how they make their money. So the Facebook will like take like 1 million photos and just sell them to a stock photo company, you know?
See what I'm saying? It's like, okay, so now we have 20 years of experience with this. I think we can sit down, you know, lawmakers can sit down and go, this is what we like, this is what we don't like, can't do this. And like, none of it should be off the table. Like, there's no reason why we can't say, you know what? Kids under 15 can't get a social media account, or like, et cetera, you know, like whatever it takes to make sure that these things are serving us and not the other way around.
Totally. And you know, whatever happened to good old fashioned grind? Like, for example, Shad, I have to rely on you to retweet the podcast that I've tagged you in. And there's no algorithm. So funny. There's no algorithm to get you to do that. If there was, I'd probably use it because I just want you to retweet it really badly because you have a lot more followers than I do. But no, I want people to see the interview. But there's just an incessant, like, they're feeding us this laziness, and while they're feeding us this laziness, it's laced with poison. Yeah. You know, like I don't know. I can't stand social media anymore.
But it's like, part of why it doesn't change is because we internalize this idea that like, there's nothing we can do about it, or this is the way it's always been. It's like, no, it's only very recently been like this, and it only is allowed to be like this because we don't say we don't want it to be like this. You got to operate our rules.
That's right, because no one said anything like, you know, imagine this, you know, chat rooms are really starting to impact society because that's what all it was back in the day. If you wanted to talk to somebody, you would find a chat room and you'd be like, hey, do you like dogs or whatever? Like, you know, and it was just a normal conversation. Now it's like, oh, you're diametrically opposed to that person. Well, let's see if we can squish you together so you can fight, spend more time online so we can justify our ads. I hate that.
Yeah, you know, it's even Google, you know, at a certain point, we're like, we're just going to drive around, film everyone's house.
Yeah.
You know?
Great.
And we're like,
I'm in one of those, by the way.
You know,
I'm in like a 5th generation Google map thing. Like you can see me in the window of my house looking at the Google car, like, and so I went on like a year later and I'm like, I remember that day. Menacingly staring at that Google car as he passed by my house and the beaches. I was like, what the fuck's going on?
That's their way, man. They ask for forgiveness, not permission.
That's right. Let's go back to the tour. Where do you like to play in Halifax? I was told by somebody. Like, that is like if you had to pick somewhere, gun to your head, okay, Halifax. Is that true, or is that?
No. I like Halifax. I'm trying to think of my favorite.
I don't think we lost you, but you're definitely. Can you say something? Shad's floating and I can't hear you, buddy. Oh, it's your internet. I think Shad has an internet problem. Now we get to look at Shad's thinking face as he tries to reestablish his internet connection. This is Shad. This is Shad's technology face as he attempts to take it back. Are you here with me? Oh no, he's gonna go back and come back in, I think. What a fascinating cat. I'm gonna let him back in. I think he's back. He's back. He's back, baby. There he is.
Apologies. Sorry. I do.
Oh, that's okay.
I think someone else is trying to get a call interview in.
Okay.
But
okay. Listen.
No, I love playing. Trying to think of my favorite places to play. Victoria's underrated place. Winnipeg's underrated.
I hear that. Winnipeg gets a bad rep, but like I hear the people there are just amazing. I've been to the airport. That's it.
Yeah, it's dope. It's dope, and it's a real music city. It's really down to earth. I love it. Yeah.
Well, listen, Shad, this is the tour. Look on this. I'll also share a link where you can buy tickets underneath this underneath the tweet that went out when this went live. So we'll try to get as many people as we can out to your show. And listen, buddy, I've interviewed you twice. The first time I interviewed you was at your PR company or something, like near King and Peter or some shit. And my cameraman, after you walked out of the room, was a great interview as far as I was concerned. You left the room and he's like, I didn't get any of that. So I was like, no. So that was like 13 years ago. So I'm glad we had this chance to catch up. Maybe I could catch you in Ottawa or something when you pass through or at the end of your tour. But either way, break a leg and have a good time, buddy.
Thanks, man. I would retweet this, but I am actually on my phone right now. But as soon as I'm off, I'll retweet the link or whatever.
That's great, man. I appreciate that. Thank you, buddy. All right.
Bet.
That's Shad. Peace, man. One of my favorite artists, period. And he doesn't have to have the word Canadian beside it. Listen, like in Canada, especially with hip hop, there are so many deserving cats that could have gone a long way with their careers if they weren't born in Canada. Shad has the is like one of the exceptions. You know, there's the Drakes of the world and everything, but I'm so proud of him. You know, being a Canadian who is the face and the voice of the perfect hip hop documentary makes me really proud of him. Later on in the week, I'm going to have R.A. the Rugged Man on the show. I'm super excited about that because he legit was blackballed by Def Jam in like 1994 or something like that. So we are going to have a good time with that. I have a couple other things going on that I don't want to talk about quite yet. I'm going to be on the Dean Blundell show a little bit later in the week, I think, or early next week, one of the two. I'm taking a little bit of a step back from the Dean Blundell show. I think I'm going to do one a week podcast, maybe twice, depending on what's happening. But I like it like that because I really want to work on this show for you guys. Before we go, I've been experimenting lately with music, and as I said to Shad, you know, I've been rhyming for 30 years. I still do it because I think it's one of the more therapeutic things that I can do in my life. And I'm sitting here for the last like 2 years during this pandemic, just writing and you know, and recording and stuff. And then my cousin, who I reconnected with, Danny Domenico Di Fiore, who goes by Gurns, is like, hey, let's do like a video for one of the tracks that you did for Blackballed. So I'm gonna close out with that, and we will see you tomorrow, maybe tonight. There's a small chance that I might be doing a half-hour podcast tonight on Pierre Polyev, apparently is the way you pronounce his name. But we'll see you on that. And thanks for joining us. And thanks, big up to Shad. Thank you, Shad, for coming out. I really appreciate that.
Thank you for having me. Look, journalism is dead. We'd all rather take selfies now than learn to comprehend. Look, I despise those colorblind, those self-absorbed reporters, those whores who suck the content for all the media hoarders. Those producers, man, they tap dance for the conglomerate's quarters. They exploit polarization, and it's done through gender, race, and borders. And meanwhile, they sell us fear, meds, and weapons every hour, leading bleeding screeds of misdeeds, but shit, none involving power. Those outlets, they insist they don't exist for shit clicks. Fuck, man, them pricks, they diss this writer like I was on some mysterious hit list. And the cable news, that's the villain. And I don't want to be mainstream. That's where fake dreams hit snakes and devils all up on the inseam. Know what I mean? A leg up into the armpit of all that corruption. Shit, this relationship, I think it's destined for a mutual destruction. Terror, mayhem. Nah, I know, I'll cool it with them J's. But you better send your fucking eagle and meet the talons of this goddamn osprey. Why? I've been blackballed before. Now I have to be my main source, looking out my front door, 'cause I've been blackballed, but now I am older. I know I have to keep on moving forward, never look over my shoulder. We live inside a landscape where editors are predators and writers get shelved and never properly mentored. Never cease to increase the pressure of the mighty pen's releases. I defeat your fucking arsenal with a single chess piece. Bless me, the non-believer. Fuck commies and libertarians and conservatives, liberals, anarchists and Presbyterians. Fuck left-wingers, right-wingers, throat singers, salesmen, the hacks who got rocked by that mentally impaired kid. I hate all of you. Find the button, press play. Abort the next generation, spare us from the next wave. And let's not blur the lines of yesterday. Just vibrate to your streetwise psilocybin sensei. It's true though, whether it's Trump or Justin Trudeau. New clothes for those who lie straight-faced, and kudos to faith-based race baiters. You guilty, shameful haters. Pull the plug, your crossfader is filthy. You milk these new breeds of dummies who promote racism and then cry to their mummies. MAGA, woke folks fight to a mutual death, and no one's left to foster divisions after the last breath. Now fucking die already. Seriously. Oh, but wait, one more thing. Bring your newspapers in case we all run out of confetti. I've been blackballed before. Now I have to be my main source, looking out my front door, cause I've been blackballed, but now I am older. I know I have to keep on moving forward, never look over my shoulder. I've been blackballed.
Blackballed. Blackballed. Blackballed. Blackballed. Blackballed.